receive signal. So that would improve the receive portion of it. Okay, as you can see here, I just kind of put examples of where the receivers would be.
Because this is where they were.
Because this is where they were. One of them was at Mount Vernon over at Little Mountain. There was one over at ICOM 911 where we're at. There was one over in Maynard Hill. And there was one in the south side of Coltis Bay Road. So there were 4 receivers that were put at these places. That was the additional thing. So basically, the concept was that dispatch would hear the audio from the site closest to the field unit via the voice over IP network. So say that the bus was in the south side of the island, they would probably be receiving a signal from Coltis Bay. If they were over the middle of the island, perhaps it would be Maynard Hill. If they were in the north part of the island, it would be ICOM. And Camino Island basically would be Mount Vernon site. That was the concept. Yes, Jill?
And that would help with the frequency or the ability to reach more places stronger, but not necessarily the channel issue.
That would allow dispatch to hear better.
But not for the communication piece then.
Yes, exactly. So,
But even this was not well thought out or engineered.
yes.
And and I hate to be this way, but we argued that back as this was going in. But anyway,
Okay. So,
I'm sorry, what did you just say?
we argued that back as this would be engineered and as it would be installed.
Back in
in
2011?
2011,
Yeah.
John and I, we worked at the time in 2011 for Day Wireless Systems. And when this system was put in, the design of it, we weren't responsible for the design of it. We were responsible, the only part that we had was we installed antenna systems at these places. At looking at the design, JJ and I kind of figured it wasn't going to work all that well, and what we ended up doing was trying to let everybody know that it wouldn't, and we even wrote a letter from Day Wireless on letterhead of Day Wireless to say we don't support this, but we weren't responsible for the.
It was not.
It was not our responsibility.
The decision was not at Day Wireless. The decision to move forward was not at ICOM. It was here.
It was here.
So.
Okay.
So basically, it was a poor decision. And how much, did anybody know how much this poor decision cost?
We can look back in the records and tell you, but I don't have the figure.
Right. So, why it didn't work? Okay, so now we're going to go into why did it not work? Is that all sites within hearing distance of the coach relay receive radio transmission to dispatch via the IT network. Basically, if the coach operator was in some of these areas, what would happen is that they were in contact with more than one receiver site, okay? The audio from that receiver site would be passed down through the network to dispatch. Well, there was no way to decide which one was the better received signal. So depending on where the coach operator was, you could have up to 4 audio streams going into dispatch
At the same time.
at the same time. And dispatch is what they're hearing, more than likely, is garbled, they're hearing distorted, they're hearing echoey, and they're hearing feedback. Because there was no way to decide which received signal was going to take precedence, so they would hear them all. Okay? So that basically was the reason why it didn't go really well. And the reason why, I guess in a sense you guys were kind of left out is because the upgrade was part of a huge multi-county public services interoperability committee, which is a PSIC grant. So this started way back in 2009.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Okay, and basically there was a big pot of money that was administered through the federal government, and Calhoun County was the people that had the purse strings. They were the ones that were just taking the money and basically, if there were projects in the 5 counties up here, you could apply for this money. You have to submit your project, and they would approve it. Well, they would just basically give the money, I guess. I don't know.
Well, we don't need to go too far into it.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so they would go into it. But anyway,
That's
the
a
long and
story.
short of it is that you guys didn't get much money because you were kind of the last ones that asked for money. Okay. So There were four different entities, or three different other entities that were involved with this project in 2011. The IT department, your IT department here, all they were responsible for was the network connectivity. All they were responsible for was to make sure that there was a network in place so that signals could get from these four sites back to ICOM 911, right?
Go back to transit.
Yeah,
To eventually get back here, and that network worked extremely well.
yeah, anyway. So the next entity was the antenna installation. That was what Data Wireless was in charge of. All we did was put in 4 antennas at 4 sites that the engineer, the project manager engineer who contracted from you folks, he told us where to put the antennas, and that's what we did at Data Wireless. That's all we did. So new antennas were installed. The other thing was, the third entity was the site radius selection and setup was done by an RFP, request for proposal, and they decided to go with the lowest bidder, who decided what radios were going to be put in. This is where the really main thing is the whole system broke down, because mobile radios, like you have in your buses, were used at the 4 sites when really they should have been what we call base station radios. Base station radios are heavier duty. They're able to do more things. They're able to accept the frequencies that they can be programmed into them, where these mobile radios weren't. So the system was kind of doomed from the beginning, in my opinion, how it went in.
Again, the mobiles that were selected to act as base stations could not function as base stations,
Right.
period.
And that was the thing that, as Data Wireless, we tried to tell everybody. Unfortunately, it went ahead. So the result was basically, again, and this is a very important statement, although the Island Transit IT department and the installation contractor installed the correct configuration according to the engineer's specifications, the design itself was flawed, and the choice of mobile radios for the site implementation resulted in a system that was virtually useless. So what ended up happening is that you had no beneficial gain from what you had before. And in my humble opinion, it even got worse. And basically, when we turned on the system for the first time, because by that point, John and I were at ICOM 911, within a minute and a half, dispatchers had called Judd and said, turn it off, because it wasn't working. You were having all these receive signals coming in. It wasn't Judd's fault, it wasn't Gary's fault, it wasn't the IT department's fault, because they had done what they were contracted to do, which was provide the network. They were responsibility for how it worked.
Who was responsible for writing up the RFP contract?
Came from here.
Nate, John, I have a question. Paul, you probably answer this, I would think. Are we paying ongoing expenses for this? Is this the interop communications that are on the statements every month?
I don't think so. Interoperability, I think, was a grant that's just a one-time payment.
So this is costing us nothing monthly then?
I'm not absolutely sure about that. I mean, we might have some ongoing network costs. I'd have to look if there was some
With
sort of connection.
rangers, so there's rangers in the vehicles, so we pay data, a data plan for that.
Okay, so moving on with that, basically what did work, and it really worked well, and this whole system that was put in 2011, what really did work well was the cloud, the Comcast internet, which is what the IT department here put in. It worked really well because it took all the signals that it was getting and it pumped it right to, eventually to here in the dispatch. So basically, they're the only piece that worked. All this other stuff around, as you can see in this drawing, the mobile radio here wasn't sufficient. The consoles actually, you've got new consoles, they worked pretty good. And the cloud worked good. The rest of it, it was really a bust. So, any questions before I move on? Okay, so moving on, simulcast system. This is a big word of the day, simulcast. Okay, this is what we believe you should have. And the reason why we say you should have is because we've put this out there already for public safety and fire in Island County, in Skagit County, and we're starting to move into sort of San Juan County now. So this is basically what we believe that you should have. Okay, Public Works, yes. I'm sorry about that. Public Works.
That's okay, we looked at each other. and just-
Yeah, Public Works, yeah, Public Works, which we're just installing now. We're just in the process of installing that now. So basically, simulcast is a spectrally efficient technology used to cover wide geographics with a limited number of channels, which is perfect for you folks. You think about it. You have a wide geographic area, you have both islands, and you have a limited number of channels. Right now you have one channel, one frequency pair. So this is perfect for you folks, okay? There's two components to a simulcast system. The first component is the simulcast transmitters. Basically, you put transmitters all over the place, and in various places on the island. Some of them are off island, but most of them are on island, okay? So you put simulcast transmitters. Basically, I'll get into a little bit more, but simulcast means everything comes up at the same time, okay? The second component is we call voting receivers. And voting receivers basically means that you have various receivers around the county or various sites, but the audio is coming back into a centralized location, and it's being voted as which the best audio to send back out to be rebroadcast.
So you're receiving one signal at the dispatch side of it.
Okay. The advantages of a simulcast system is greater coverage because you're saturated. You're bringing up more than one transmitter. Before you only had Lyman Hill. Now you're bringing up, it can be up to 10 transmitters. Our system is but you basically want to bring up more than one transmitter. You have less dead spots because you are saturating the island so much by the signal. Better monitoring capabilities via the network. Because the network, you're able to know what's going on at the sites because you're monitoring it all through the sites through internet basically, or through a network IP scheme.
So if I could real quick.
Yes, but
what's being proposed here is that we would bring transit into the IP digital network that we monitor, manage, and maintain.
yeah, I'm going to show it up here in a minute. So.
I was gonna say, I got a quick question.
Yep.
If the piece of property, for lack of better words, is not inside the circle, does that mean they don't get coverage?
No, this is kind of like an informational thing only. So
Okay.
basically, what we try to do with the system is we try to cover all the areas. Okay, and so this is just kind of representative of what we try to do is saturate the entire area. And a little bit, a few slides from now, you'll see what we have put in place for the public safety and for what we're doing for public works, and you'll kind of see how that will help you folks decide to go down this road. So the last point I want to make is operationally, it's very easy to use with the dispatchers and field personnel. Dispatchers, they push one button and all the work's done. They don't have to decide, okay, who's on group 1, who's on group 2. They don't have to decide where the bus is located to select the site. They push the one button and all the work's done in the background. That's the best thing about a simulcast system is that it takes a lot of guesswork out of dispatch operation. And the field personnel, when they're out there talking, they just push their button, it's all done, it's all transparent to them. All they know is that they're hearing and they're transmitting. So, what is simulcast? I want to get a little bit into this, just a little bit. Simulcast is, like I said, it has simulcast transmit. Simulcast transmitting basically broadcasts the same audio at the same time from multiple radio sites, allowing the units in the field more opportunity to receive a good signal without having to change channels. This is accomplished by synchronizing signals by a set of clocks and a lot of other specialized equipment. A lot of specialized equipment that allows these signals to transmit at the same time, because these sites are different places, different locations, and so it allows you, though, to key up everything at the same time so that the same transmit signal is going out of however many sites you have in your system. Okay, converse, the other part of it is the voted receiver. The voted receiver basically selects the best audio to be used And all transmit audios within the field's unit's range are sent to a centralized location, which is basically called the prime site. And the prime site decides by equipment which audio signal is the best to select. And then that audio signal is then rebroadcast out of all the different sites.
What's our prime site going to be?
It would be ICOM 911. Okay, because that's where we have a lot of the infrastructure. And I'll get into this a little bit more, but there's a lot of infrastructure already in place for you folks because they've been shared with other entities.
The good news is that's what I thought, so I'm making some progress in this conversation.
Yes, yes. So, the network. This is the heart and soul of everything. Now, this is just an example. I'll show you the next slide. Basically, the network is always sending and receiving voice data between the various sites. And for the simulcast system to work, there's a network that basically, quote unquote, I said moves. It moves the radio signals, transfer and receive audio all between the different sites. So this is kind of an example that this shows up for. This is not what we have. This is just an example of saying, you know, you have a site here that's in Fire Trail, Coltis Bay, Island Transit, and I have the arrows going back and forth because there's talking going on via the network to all the sites at all the time. You know, even now as we sit here right now, there's sites out there for the public safety that all these signals are going back and forth. Now you say, what is the network? There it is. Okay? This is basic, different components of the network. There's different agencies that have bought in and contributed to the infrastructure of our network. Why they're different colors?
I was just going to just really quickly just say that this is the IP digital private network. It is a private network. It's not out there in the internet somewhere. This is our private network that these two manage and maintain.
Right. And there's very components to them. I won't really get into it a whole bunch, but you know, you see the orange here, that's part of the Skagit County network. Our network basically is we use the Skagit County, but our sites are basically in the blue dotted things here. You know, we have sites over in Rucker Hill and Everett. We have a site over in Marysville Fire Trail that we pump into. You know, all over the island. We even have one. We have a couple over here. We have one in Hansville, which is in Kitsap County, that we put in last year. Maynard Hill, which is a very tall hill. How tall is that one?
2,200 feet.
2,200 feet that we tap into. And all the different agencies use this. LETAC, law enforcement uses this. All the fire people use this. Public Works will be using this. And if you so choose, so will you be able to use this infrastructure.
And if I could, Judy, one of the other main players in our network is the State Patrol.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So this basically gives a representation, very basic representation of what's at every site. At the bottom here, you have simulcast repeater. Those are representative of different sites. They process their signals through what we call a channel bank, which is the other three boxes above those. And that's basically just an interface between the transceivers and the cloud. And then on the top half of the slide is basically what you have at your prime site, which is you have a channel bank that takes the signals that you receive and it's going to reprocess it back down. It sends the information to a receiving voter, which decides which receiver is the best one. And the simulcast transmitter, that decides how many transmitters key up at the same time. Eventually all this stuff, through smoke and mirrors, gets back to the dispatch consoles. And there's a lot of equipment. This is very basic of what's out there. But there's a lot of equipment that has to work in tandem with each other, timing and you know, things like that, so that it works.
Does each channel frequency have to buy all of that equipment, or does everybody new come in just buy what's below the cloud and everything else is the same once?
Even better than that, there are things you have to buy for Island Transit. If they were going to get into this, you'd have to buy each one of your simulcast repeaters.
Right.
Okay. The channel banks, those boxes above, those are already in place. Okay, because they can take.
Depending on the site.
Depending on the site, yes. But you'd have to get a a simulcast transmitter, because the controller that's up here at the very top, and your own voting receiver, because voting receivers, there's one box per channel. So, you know, we have Fire 1, Fire 2, Fire 3, Fire 4, Fire 5 in the county. Each one of those has their own box, their own voting receiver, because they take it from the different sites.
And they're all separate frequencies.
Yes.
That's
So-
the next slide.
Okay, network build out. Basically, this is how we started out with this simulcast, is that JJ and I, when we worked at Day Wireless Systems, we started with the build out. And it's, I can say here, this is technically demanding and moderately costly to implement. The thing is that the stuff isn't cheap, however, it really works good. It's basically what that says. And the simulcast network, we started really building it out in 2012. We started out with the site at ICOM 911, Winston Way, which is over in Camino, Holtus Bay Road, which is in South Whidbey, Race Road, which is kind of sort of in the middle of Whidbey Island, and Maynard Hill, which is over here in, which county is that? Jefferson County. I get them all mixed up. That was in 2012, so we brought 5 simulcast sites up, or 5 sites in 2012, which we had to buy all the infrastructure to do that. Okay, in 2013 we added Mount Airy, all the way at the top there. In 2014 we added 4 more sites, Woody Way, which is kind of in the southern part of the
It's
island
Greenbank.
here.
Greenbank.
Greenbank, yeah. Fire Trail, which is over in Marysville, Rucker Hill, which is in Everett, and Hansville, which is over in Kitsap County. And then in 2015, we're hoping, obviously, that we can put a site here right at Allied Transit. You know, that's really what we're trying to, if it happens, that's where we're going to put another site in, right here.
It would be the new site of the system. The other sites, if we move forward, would be shared sites that are already there.
Okay, how do we know it's going to work? We know it's going to work because we've done it a lot. This chart basically tells you there's a black X, that means it's in place. So as you can see here, LETAC is at ICOM, Winston, Coltis, Maynard, Erie, Whiddy, Fire Trail. We're going to be putting it in Rucker and Hansville, and hopefully Transit.
And LETAC, just so you're aware, that's the main pair that the Sheriff's Office, Langley, and Coopville has. That's their main frequency.
Okay. Going across the board, you see Fire 1, Fire 2, Fire 3, Fire 4, Fire 5. As you can tell, they're not at all different sites because of where they're at. You know, Fire 3 is South Whidbey, and so they don't need to have sites, you know, something at Race or Erie. So depending on where the actual geographic area that these fire districts are at is how it was decided where they would have sites at. Public Works, as you can see, that's the one we're working on right now. In fact, we're just waiting to get some purchase orders so that we can get some of the other equipment. And they will be at the, hopefully, they'll be at the 5 sites to start with right here, and then hopefully add on later. Good thing about this is that you can always add. You know, you can start with the basic sites, and then you can add the sites as, you know, as you decide where the concentration or the penetration needs to be. So, another way how we know it's going to work is that we've done it before. When we were to Day Wireless, JJ and I put in Community Transit. It has 4 simulcast radio channels. We started with 3 sites, and by the time we left there, it had grown to 11 sites, all over Snohomish County. Skagit, UHF, and VHF, they have 7 simulcast channels right now. Started with 3 sites and grown to 9 sites. And then in our county, ICOM 911, VHF, and UHF, we have 6 simulcast channels right now, soon to be 7. And we started with 4 sites, and now we've grown to 10 sites with projections of adding about 2 more sites. So that's how we know it's going to work, because we've done it a lot.
So we're an hour into this. Sorry it took so long,
Yeah.
but
I have
hopefully
a
it was
couple,
worth it.
okay, well, I have a couple questions before I have to leave. What are we looking at as initial cost, one-time expense, and what are we looking for ongoing costs or something like this?
Well, we don't know yet. We proposed multiple things over the past, here in the past. You know, however, we felt it was best to sit down with Ken and staff and, okay, let's start from scratch. So let's see exactly what, you know, the new administration feels would be best for transit to begin with.
Okay, another question I have. Let's say the system was installed today. How long until the radios and the receivers and the repeaters are needing an upgrade?
Well, Commissioner, that's a good question, because, I don't know if most of you know this, but the Commissioner serves on my board of directors. And one of the things that we discussed at our last board meeting was that right now, ICOM, the different fire districts, it'll soon be county with Public Works, we're going to be sitting there with, you know, $1.5 to $2 million worth of inventory out there. And the inventory that's sitting out there right now, it's fairly new. And when I say that, it's within the last, you know, 3 to 5 years that most of that inventory has gone in. But in the future, you know, we need to be looking at the future. And with the future, the inventory will need to be replaced, you know, within probably a 15-year time frame. You know, just to be conservative, I would say 10 to 15-year time frame. You know, and when you take a look at King County, you take a look at Snohomish County and what they've done. Just recently, King County just passed a huge bond, and I think it was a short period bond. When I say short, it was like 5 to 6 years. Snohomish County is getting ready to do the same thing. And personally, when I look at this sort of thing, when we look at the entire infrastructure, and if we bring transit into the infrastructure, if we do the same thing sometime in the future, again, you know, a 10 to 15-year time frame, we're going to be looking at that time probably $2.5 to $3 million to replace the inventory. But let's take a look at what we would be telling the taxpayers. We're going to be replacing the inventory that takes care of all of your law enforcement needs, all of the fire districts, Whitby General Hospital, and we would roll transit in there. So this is basically the infrastructure, the entire infrastructure that takes care of the county. So again, you know, we constantly look towards the future. This is all really quite new inventory that's out there. But this has been the discussion that I've had with, you know, with my board here just in the last month. So Commissioner, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into the conversation from the board, because this is going to be a two-part question. One goes to Sean, is how many drivers do we have on shift at any one time that could possibly need to use a radio? And considering how this is primarily everybody's concern seems to be emergencies, we're going to have 911 text. So would it not be cheaper or more effective use of our dollars?
It's proposed,
It's
but there
proposed.
may be at some point
But
in the future.
for our communications, would it not be the same thing if people had a smartphone that had internet capability or a service tablet in the bus for an emergency? I mean, this is the main concern really, is emergencies, right? Because we're not supposed to be sitting there saying, yo, bus 311, we're going to meet at Subway for lunch. These are supposed to be for emergency frequencies. These are supposed to be for handling.
I don't think that's one of our issues, as far as, you know, there are times we monitor and we have to, you know, step in and say, you know, for keep it business. Our issue is not being able to get the connectivity behind the mountain or behind the trees. We may have 40 drivers on, you know, between Camino and Whitby on a shift. As far as emergencies for us, it's a safety thing. There's a lot of mental health issues going on. We've done a lot of training with that. But it's our take. We got to be able to protect the people out on the road. One channel, I don't know if that's going to get it done for us. In fact, I'm pretty sure that that's not going to happen, because we'll be stepping on each other. So, you know, we're open to, you know, whatever the best solution is.
Well, I'm just looking at the effective use of dollars, because, well, right now it's all an unknown what the cost would be to upgrade and everything else. And I just don't understand. We have 40 drivers on shift.
Could have, yes.
No, could have or we do have?
Yes.
Well, not every shift.
We have-
He's saying on some shifts there could be 40 drivers.
You said how many people were on shift at any time
Yeah, how
that would be
many-
needing
how
use
many-
of the radio.
Yes.
Yeah, so about 40 drivers between Camino and Whitby would possibly be needing to use that radio.
Can you put,
Oh, okay. Thanks very much for this. I thought my head was going to explode at one point.
Sorry.
That's okay. I frequently forget to have my little cell phone charged. So. But my question is there any possibility when you come in with the final costs of any federal grant money to assist in this?
I believe that the transit, and you guys can speak up.
After that
actually.
came in.
We currently have a grant outstanding that we want to apply to the radios and receivers.
that's in
So
the.
that will pay the bulk of the equipment costs. It wouldn't pay the ongoing costs if there were any.
Thank you.
There might be some sort of arrangement if we put a tower at our location, perhaps.
This is where we need to sit down and talk. You need to see exactly what ongoing expenses that may be associated with it. Yeah, I don't know right now. And then it's also based on, the number of sites that you may want to start with. They're all variables right now, so we need to start from the beginning. Let's see where we go.
Will the smart card system, when we go to a pay system, be integrated into this communication system too? Or is that going to be a totally separate piece of hardware and software?
That would be totally separate, based on GPS and other, whatever current technology is when as systems evolve, as new systems come on board, but that would be separate from this communication system. And I don't know if smart card could be.
If I could, I think I could. I don't know yet either, but there's a very good possibility that it could ride on our network. I'd have to see what's being proposed. These two would have to see what's being proposed.
And we want to see if it's integrated with the other transit systems too. I think that's one of our goals, is to have a seamless system where you can go from transit district to transit district.
Well, if you'd like, we could certainly be part of that discussion to see what would fold into what we do or what would not. We're happy to do that.
Well, we're going to move this one along here. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It's a good presentation. And we're going to go on to item number 2. We've only got an hour left, or a little less than an hour. And so we're going to pick up the pace a little bit here. The next item, number 2, is a letter on behalf of the Island Transit Board of Directors regarding the discontinuation of the Route 411 West and the 411 Camino. And we'll start with the interim executive director of this issue to present this letter. And I'll remind you again, there's no, in this particular workshop,